Hello, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to Satsang. Satsang is an ancient spiritual practice from India. It means being in reality together. I give Satsang live every Wednesday and Sunday night in Portland, Maine. This Dharma talk was recorded during one of our Wednesday night gatherings. Please visit jayakula.org to learn more about the teachings. You can find video satsangs on Jayakula's YouTube channel, and my books are all available on Amazon.com. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. So, my fine feathered friends, I have a question for you, especially for people that haven't been around long. So, what is your idea of self-realization? Or liberation, or enlightenment, whatever term you want to use. What is your idea of that?
Well, I think it's knowing enough, having enough self-knowledge in an embodied way so that you can host other people and share connection with other people and other beings, like nature and all that.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else care to take a plunge?
To be completely present and completely in love with each moment and each interaction.
Good one.
To embrace our humanity and our divinity at the same time.
So it's a puppy pile? I just thought of that.
Ease of mind.
Ease of mind?
Living an uncontrived and fully expressive human life while also being devoted to others, being of service naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Two words that really stood out were uncontrived and present.
Mm-hmm.
Really feeling how everything is auspicious and everything is the same taste. Really feeling that.
Spontaneous and free and and graceful and no tension.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling open without a filter or a defense of any kind between you and what's coming toward you.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling total responsiveness with no holds barred and feeling friendly towards everything.
Mm-hmm.
I just imagine liquefying into a flow, like just like being in the, like melting away tightness and just like flowing.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to say more?
No, I just wanted to move.
Last call.
Realizing that who and what we are is not this body, this personality, and that who we really are is really something that probably cannot be described with words.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would just amend that, just in case I don't get back to it. I want to amend it because part of it is realizing we are not only this body and this mind. There's nothing that we're not. Right? So we are not only this body and this mind.
I use the word enjoy. I want to get that word in there. Like enjoyment. Yeah.
Anybody else harboring any?
Equanimity.
Equanimity.
Value, having a sense of the value of everything.
You said earlier today,
Something about
mental labor and agency, and fully stepping into agency in your own life and all aspects of it.
That's good, but that's relative. The question of agency doesn't really exist from the absolute perspective.
Well, there's so much more.
Go ahead. The floor is yours.
I just think of all the wisdom virtues, compassion and intelligence and mercy and all of them.
So what do you think, thinking of your definition of enlightenment or self-realization and everything everybody said, what do you think you have to do to embody that and not be how you are right now? What do you think's required?
Destruction.
She says so sweetly.
Burn it down.
The quiet ones that get you.
Wow.
And relax.
Relax.
Amidst the destruction.
Relax in the destruction.
What do you have to relax? You make it sound so innocent.
Surrender.
You just have to get under a blankie and relax.
Like, relax your expectations and your tensions and your demands and your aggressions and your
Self-concept.
beliefs and your desires and
Reactions.
reactions.
Reactivity, reactions, yeah. That's a tall order. And even though that might sound good right now, every single one of you will resist that process should you choose to undertake it. Enlightenment sounds great, so you actually have to do something about it. So I started asking these questions because we're having quite a few new and newish people around these days. And Jayakula is somewhat different than your average spiritual community in the United States these days, in that the purpose of Jayakula is to help people to self-realize. That doesn't mean that every person that comes here has that goal, or knows what it is, or cares what it is. I mean, even some people who've been around a very long time don't really care about that. But what makes Jayakula a little bit different and somewhat scarier is that those of us who choose to are actually being on a path of waking up or self-realization. And that requires some courage. In fact, it requires quite a bit of courage. It requires allowing aspects of things that you've been holding on to very tightly to be destroyed or at least dissolved. It requires a kind of dismantling of your whole conceptual defensive apparatus. And Jayakula is, of course, not the only spiritual tradition or spiritual community that's undertaking this. But what a lot of people are more likely to encounter in the United States these days is, something where it's very much more easy, where you can go and meditate for 20 minutes and meet people and nothing much is asked of you. Right? So here at Jayakula, nothing much will be asked of you if you don't want anything to be asked of you. I mean, that's fine. Anybody can be here doing whatever they like. There's absolutely no pressure or demand to do what other people are doing or what some core of other people are doing. But it is true that I'm a very traditional practitioner, even though, I have some progressive social and political stuff going on, and I like to watch science fiction movies that really don't let that fool you. Because I really am a very traditional practitioner myself. I started practicing when I was in my mid-20s and have practiced many hours a day for decades on end. I am absolutely confident in this practice because it worked on me and is still working. And I am traditional in the sense that I am willing to work with people in a very intimate way and in a very rough and tumble way sometimes to try to help people to divest themselves of the structures that are keeping them from enjoying life in this very profound way that is possible too. So there are many ways of describing what self-realization is, and let me just say before I go on that I don't have any story about myself that I am enlightened. I am just doing my practice like most of you are, and a little further along, and that's it. I also don't have any solidified idea of what self-realization is, or that there's like an end point that we arrive at and then we throw a party and hang out a shingle that says I'm enlightened. One of the realities of being a spiritual practitioner, if you are going to remain non-dogmatic, in other words, if you're going to remain in a condition in which you can actually realize, then you're going to quickly decide and understand that you don't have any idea what self-realization is. And that's a good thing. If you harden your idea about it at this stage, then you will basically end up with a booby prize of realizing only to the stage of what you think self-realization is. So there are all kinds of ideas out there about what self-realization is, and most of them are extremely limited. And that's fine, but I'm fine with not knowing exactly what it is. But I'm also fine with having had glimpses of it in myself, and more than glimpses in my teacher. I have that to have confidence in. I don't need to have a story about it, like, what it's going to be like when I arrive, so that I can measure, how far along I am or anything like that. Those of you that are relatively new here, you are not going to be measured against some sort of scale of progress. And for some people, that's a big problem because they're uncomfortable with the open-endedness of that, and they'd like to be measured and told how they're doing. They'd like a report card. But one of the things you must do if you are going to have actual realization is stop measuring your progress. You have to be in the live conversation with wisdom, the live conversation with presence. That's all that's required of you. And it's so simple that it drives most people crazy. They want more to do, like measuring, competing. What I've discovered in my life as a practitioner of more than 3 decades now is that realization is largely incremental. So it just happens slowly over time. And it might be punctuated now and then with some big event of a sudden deepening of your awakeness, but that in general it's accruing slowly, and karmas are just dissolving slowly as you go along, and you're gaining insights and your heart is opening, and that just happens as you do your daily practice. Which is lucky for us, because there's lots of stories floating around out there about sudden enlightenment, and if it were really like that we had to feel nothing until some sudden all-encompassing thing happened, I don't think anyone would practice. It would be too hard, right? The fact that it is mostly incremental is actually a blessing, because we get little tastes of things along the way, right? And it accumulates our level of openness. I think the most important way that you can begin to understand what self-realization means in this kind of tradition is it means knowing yourself. Knowing not who you are, but what you are. So when we say, I know who I am, we usually mean some sort of collection of descriptions of your capacities, your talents, your deficits, your habits, your some inventory of your personality or your psychology, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about more understanding, knowing what is the basis of your existence. What are you made out of? Right? What is your real capacity? How did you come to be? How are you related to everything else? These much more fundamental questions of what you are. this is called a direct realization tradition. It means that you do some stuff like meditation and mantra and other kinds of stuff, and you have the possibility to have a direct encounter with what you are. So that encounter itself is an encounter with wisdom about what you are. So the understanding about what you are, the wisdom about what you are, becomes instantly embodied. You instantly have a feeling of more capacity in your perceptions and in your ability to love and people and feel compassion and have just understanding of how things work on a very fundamental level. There's something about this tradition that's very much like being some kind of scientist or explorer or experimenter. Because you're out there on your cushion doing your thing, and then we also do integrated practice during the day. And you're trying to orient yourself not to the present. You almost got a bit, you got to change that word a little bit, to presence. A very, very important distinction. So the present, as many of you have heard me say, is just an aspect of linear time. But presence, the fundament of all of reality, alive awareness, you could call it, has no time. Time is an artifact of dualistic experience. So when we talk about being in presence or being immersed in presence, our sense of time is going to change radically, and the present is nothing. It's like a potato chip. It's a little dry something. Right. Being immersed in presence is this extraordinary, I wouldn't say it's an experience, but it's an ongoing conversation or an ongoing call and response situation that is absolutely magnetizing and fascinating and difficult and also wonderful. It's everything. When we're doing our practice, we are trying to recognize presence, become immersed in it, and stay immersed in it. That's really the whole practice. Recognize, become immersed, stay immersed. Our karmas are patterns of body, energy, and mind that repeat in time. Like our habitual responses to things, our habitual beliefs about everything, our habitual self-concepts, our habitual ways of relating, our eating habits, all this stuff. These distract us. They actually are actual patterns of actual awareness and energy that have momentum, and they distract us. So we can recognize presence through the practice and through the teacher also in a specific way that I won't talk about right now. But in any case, we can recognize presence, but our karmas, our habitual patterns, will distract us from that over and over and over again. They have momentum and they pull us away from being immersed in presence. So that's why we have to do daily practice, so that we can train to remain undistracted and immersed in living presence. So all sadhana, our spiritual practice, is a training to do that. And we have to do it every day because we need to build up new momentum to do that, so we're not distracted by this other stuff. Becoming immersed in living presence means to discover what you are, because you are that. And we can go deeper and deeper into it as we go along. First we might experience it just as energy, but later we start to recognize that it's also intelligence. And later we start to recognize that it's also us. It's not just out here, it's everywhere. And later we start to recognize that it's actually not just consciousness and energy, that it's actually wisdom itself. Things like compassion. That it's that experience of presence is actually made of wisdom, or what I call wisdom virtues. So these are the different sort of depths of the pool, the depths of immersion. Like first we're in the shallow end, maybe we have some energy experiences of some sort or another. That's usually the most common first kind of encounter. And then we go a little deeper in the pool, and we feel something like awareness. It's weird. And then we go deeper in the pool. We think it's like either in here or out there, or we think it's somewhere. And we realize, oh no, it's everywhere. And then we go deeper in the pool and we just sense its intelligence, and we start to feel we're being communicated with. It's like freaky deaky. Then we start to notice more and more and more of how communications are happening between that and us, or it and us. And as all of this deepening in the pool is happening, we're learning more and more about reality, and our capacity to be a player in reality is increasing. Our senses are opening up, our mind is opening up. We're using a kind of intelligence we didn't even know we had before. Right? We have a kind of skill in relating to circumstances and other people that we didn't know we had. And our sense of being a separate individual self is beginning to dissolve. And eventually we get to the point where what we're experiencing is wisdom. And our own wisdom, we realize that's what we are. And at that point, there's another kind of way of describing self-realization. So my teacher said, know yourself and know God and know yourself. They're the same thing. So knowing yourself. But at some point we realize that everything is made of the same wisdom. That all phenomena have equality. So this is another one of the major ways of describing self-realization, that we realize the equality of all phenomena. And when we realize that, our level of reactivity to everything goes whoosh, way down. Way, way down. And we're able to be much, much more skillful in life, because we're no longer having this wall of reactivity messing everything up for us. So this is what we are doing in a nutshell, is doing practice to have that experience of presence and become more immersed in it and explore it more deeply and more deeply and more deeply. And along the way, we also have to do a lot of work relinquishing various patterns and being willing to let go of them or have them be ripped away from us. Being willing to see what our real condition is, how we really are showing up. So we know what it is we're trying to relax. Right? Can't work with something if you don't see it. So some things can be quite rough and tumble or painful or sharp, but there's also the increasing perception and feeling and embodiment of a lot of wisdom and virtue, like compassion and kindness. I'm going to stop there. If anybody wants to ask me any questions or say anything, feel free. Jayakula is a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. We are based in Portland, Maine and Portland, Oregon. Visit jayakula.org to explore more of our offerings.